Well, I have to tell you, I was so happy when Bill invited me to come here today because this is my last official speaking engagement in my capacity as CEO. I couldn't think of a better place to be here. I see so many friends, so many colleagues that I work with, people who have been on my board, like Della was on our opera board, our wonderful chairman, Gary Sasso, who was also the chairman of our National Executive Search Committee, and you'll get to meet Greg a little bit later. Sandy, who has served on our foundation board forever, our lobbyist. so it's like being home, so what's better than that? And I have to say, Bill said, well, Judy, we'd like you to speak about your 30 years and the master plan. Oh, and you have 8 minutes. So, okay. So it's been a great 30 years, and the master plan is fantastic. Is that okay, good, Bill? So you'll have to help me because those of you who know me know that I can talk and talk and talk, but I will try to keep it to that 8 minutes because I know you have questions and I know you're going to want to meet Greg. But before I begin, I would like to introduce my colleagues from the Straz who are here today. First, Emmanuel, who is our IT person, because I know nothing about IT, and he's going to help make sure. I'm not going to do it now, Joel. I just wanted to introduce you. And also, my wonderful, my partner all these years, Warren Shepherd, has been at the Straz for 32 years, and he's been our COO. And honestly, there's no way I could have done anything that we've accomplished here without Lauren. So please help me. And I'm going to introduce you to Greg now, but at the end, I hope you'll ask Greg. Greg Holland from San Francisco, please help me welcome Greg. I've known Greg for way more than 20 years, and I used to actually partner on Broadway shows with the company that he worked with. And I must tell you, I couldn't be more thrilled that he is our new CEO. He has already hit the ground running. And as we were discussing, you know, when you've done something like what many of us do, your life work for 30 years plus, I just was hoping that we would find the right person. And I must say, I feel so good that I can leave now because I know it's going to be in such good hands, and I know you're all going to be there to support Greg the way you have supported me all these years. So you'll get a chance to meet Greg a little bit later. But at any rate, but I thought, let me talk about some of the highlights, and then we'll talk about the master plan. You know, I must say, when the Performing Arts Center first opened, and I was running a performing arts center in New Haven, Connecticut, the Schubert Performing Arts Center, we couldn't believe that they were building a multi-venue performing arts center complex, and we all called it Tampa Bay. We didn't even know where Tampa was. It wasn't even on the cultural landscape, really, truly. But it was such a phenomenal thing, and it was on the cover of all our professional journals. And we said, wow, isn't that interesting? It is the largest performing arts center south of the Kennedy Center, Lincoln Center, Kennedy Center, and our Performing Arts Center, and that still remains true. But the interesting thing was, I think, what brave and courageous people, not just to build another hall, but something so significant that was really going to catapult Tampa into the future. And that's the wonderful thing about Tampa. When they do some things, they do them so well. We have other things we still need to do, like transportation. But that's another issue. So when I got called, this was in, I guess, 1991, you know, we have a very small industry, and I have to call, as we all get from an executive search firm. I wasn't interested in the job, but I was coming down here to see my sister who lives in Sarasota. And I thought, well, I'll come down, but don't consider me a candidate. You know, but I'll be happy to meet the search firm because I don't like when they take you and wine and dine you, and then you feel like, you know, It's like when you're a girl and you go out on a date and you want to pay your own way, you don't want to always independent, right? So I came down, and interestingly, here I am in the theater. I passed the building. There was no signage on the building. It looked like a big fortress. So I was looking for it, and then finally somebody directed, and I maybe some of you remember the wonderful H.L. Culbreth. He greeted me. He's such a wonderful man. And I said, Mr. Culbreth, I said, whatever happens here, I'm so happy to meet all of you. But can I just say one thing? Please put a big, big sign on the building. So I met these wonderful people, and as I said, I really didn't have any intention of coming down. But the search committee, they had worked so hard on this building, and at that time it was fledgling, it was some challenges, that I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with Tampa, and I've had that love of Tampa, and I still do. My husband came down, and we have really just met so many wonderful people. And I think sometimes we have to remember how special Tampa is. Tampa is such a warm, embracing community, especially when you're from somewhere else. And you can really make a difference here. So we're staying here, we're not going anywhere. Tampa is our home. Anyway, see what happens when I start talking. Okay, enough about you. So, but here's some highlights. The sign was a big one. And then not only did we put a sign, we put a neon on the sign. And there was no neon in Tampa at the time, if you remember. But, we're in show business, and this was new, and we were on 275, where thousands and thousands of cars go by every year. And so I said, this might be the shortest job I have, but at least we're going to have this big sign. But, it wasn't hard. There was so much that was right. The complex itself was state-of-the-art. And by the way, those theaters are still state-of-the-art. We have really put a lot of money in them to keep them that way over the years. But so many places have had to blow out back walls or fix them, and we don't have to. Those theaters work just as well now by capital improvements, of course, as they did before. The programming really needed to be improved. And we were able to improve Broadway. Broadway was the most important, but we really started getting the first runs, not the bus and trucks. We increased subscription from like 1,000, I think, to 10,000. And that made a difference because, producers, they want to come to the market and take as much money out for that show as they can. Because, that's a commercial venture. We're a not-for-profit, but that's a commercial venture. So once we got subscription up, and I knew the producers because of my work previously, we were able to get, with my help from my Tampa product partners, we really were able to make tremendous progress on that end. And then even with the other programming, we had to not only bring what the genres we were bringing, but the best of the genres, and elevate the experience there, and then the guest experience as well. So that was great. We had developed a marvelous staff. Education was always very important to me. I started as an educator, and I would get these calls from the community. People saying, where can my child study this? Where can I take classes in this? And actually, there's no certification for arts training, and you're dealing with the physical body. So I went to the board and said, our community is asking for these things. We need to find qualified people who can care for these young people and adults. And that was the beginning of the Adult Conservatory, which really has become so successful that we will be adding to it as part of the master plan because we're completely out of space. Plus, we have 50 partnerships throughout the county, this county and other counties, for underserved young people. And that is actually a theater. We find so many people of talent, young people of talent that would not have access, but now we go out and we find them. And it has been such a joy to see how they have really found new careers new professional opportunities that we didn't have before. Opera is also, as you know, a love of mine. And here, I remember going on the stage for the first time, the Marsani stage, and you know, they built an opera house. It's not a rectangle. It's like a true European opera house. It's a horseshoe. And we have the best acoustics in the world. Russell Johnson, who was the acoustician, is regarded as one of the best. He's dead now, but he did a masterful job on the acoustics in all of the halls. So again, I went to the board and I said, you know, I'd like to start an opera company, which I did when I was in New Haven. And they said, okay. And I said, I really know I can do it, but you have to get your approval. And they said, well, you pay down the debt, so you can do whatever you want. Just don't have any more debt, that's all. I said, no problem. And that's the wonderful thing about our board. They've always been so willing to take chances in a measured way. But that's the way we've been able to expand. Okay, to take a drink. How many minutes do I have? Okay, I'll be very brief on this. So we went from 3 original theaters. We now have 6 theaters. And the interesting thing is the design itself was state-of-the-art for the 80s. But you know, that was the end point of that architectural movement called brutalism, where everything was very hard planes. And really, we've softened the look because of signage. But you approach it from the back end, and it almost looks like a fortress. I mean, it's a very hard-looking building. And the other thing that was interesting and innovative at the time in the 80s was that each theater had its own lobby. That was very innovative. However, that means you need a ticket just to get into a lobby. So unless you had a ticket, you couldn't even access the Performing Arts Center. So those were the 2 big principles of this new master plan. And by the way, Sandy helped with your foundation on our original concept, and we couldn't have done that without you know, the Saunders Foundation. Not the Saunders, I'm sorry. Stockwell Foundation, no. And Gary had started a think tank to talk about the future of the Performing Arts Center. At the time, we were about 20, 25 years old. And out of that, a couple of things happened. They said, you know, we have to look at the riverfront, what's happening there. The Straz Center had the first Riverwalk, but it didn't connect to anything. And now, you know, the success of the Riverwalk. So we realized we had to address that. So we needed to address the Riverwalk. We had to open up the center to the public so anybody could come in and enjoy the aesthetics and the experience there. And what was the third thing? Help me here. We had another principle that just talked about, but even I can't remember, which is why I'm retired.
The student stuff.
Thank you. Okay, so we have had a wonderful master planning committee, and my colleague Lauren Shepard is the project director on it. This plan is going to be so transformational, not just to the Straz Center, but to Tampa and the Riverwalk. And you know, the center's 35 years old. It is a mature building, but this is going to transform it for generations to come, at least for another 35 years. And it will include so many wonderful public spaces that the entire community will have access to. So I know Bill said you don't like to see a lot of things, but what we did bring for you, at least to look at, is what they call a fly-through, which is how you can see what the whole thing is going to look like. So I'd like you to take a look at that first, and then we can be here to talk a little bit more or answer your questions if you have them. Is this the one with the music? Okay. I like music.
I do know. Did the TV's auto turn off? I think after so many times you click off. Did the TV's auto shut off?
I think they did.
Yeah, but
We did practice this.
you have to turn the
Always a challenge with AV equipment.
I'm just glad it wasn't me, it was my IT guy.
Can you tell, while we're waiting, can you tell the story about Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Oh, Lynn is you all know probably who Lynn is now. He is the writer, lyricist by Hamilton, just wonderful, wonderful person. And we launched many tours from Broadway, and he did a show prior to Hamilton called In the Heights. And so we launched that tour, I guess that's about 10 years ago now. And he was so great. So he was with us for like 3 weeks while it was in rehearsal. And he said, Judy, what's going on over here with the conservatory? So that's our conservatory. We do a lot of master classes with artists that come in with our students. And I said, would you ever be open to coming and meeting them and maybe telling them a little bit about what you do, you know, with how you put together a musical. And this is before anybody knew who Lynn was. The whole time he was there, I don't know, he must have done at least 3 or 4 sessions for those young people. This is something they will never forget now because he went on to be so great. So I said to him, I had lunch with him one day while he was there. I said, gee, Lynn, what's your next project? He said, well, he said, I'm working on something now. He said, you know, I read a wonderful biography of and he said, you know, I see a musical there about Alexander Hamilton. But how I see it is it will have a very diverse cast because that's what we heard in America now. And he's telling me all of that. And I'm listening to him thinking, oh, I'm so sorry for him. That is just